To say that we have been dealing with a lot in 2020 is quite an understatement. It's been a struggle. We've encountered difficulties, a lot of death and destruction and violence, not only in a pandemic, but in violence in dealing with racism, dealing with destructive fires in nature and cyclones and hurricanes, and trying to make sense of it all. The gospel today, Jesus is talking again to the chief leaders at the time. It's a parable that reminds us that the world that we live in, we are meant to live it as a community of love. And this community holds both the good and the bad, growth and destruction, tragedy and triumph, life and death. And it seems like 2020, if one perspective, it just seems that the negative, the destruction, just seems to keep winning. In one perspective. Another perspective is that we can see the resiliency of goodness and care and concern for people stepping forward. Again, how do we choose to live as a community of love? In this parable, Jesus tells the chief elders and priests of the people, it's a parable about a landowner building a vineyard, planting a vineyard, and taking a lot of care in building a hedge around it, digging out a vat, and erecting a tower to give it every opportunity to grow. Leases it to tenant farmers, and then goes on a journey. The landowner then asks servants to go, come harvest time, to go pick the grapes with the tenants. And somehow the tenants seize them, beat them, and kill them. The landowner sends more servants and they do the same. And then the landowner says, I will send my son. Surely they will respect my son. And they do the same thing. They seize, drag him out of the vineyard, and kill him. And Jesus says to the chief priests and elders, what do we do? And he's like, well, get rid of the wicked. And the twist is that the stone rejected by some is building blocks for others. How do we see the world? How does new life emerge in the midst of this? The point is that the word that became flesh and dwells among us, for us as Christians, is the same word, Jesus, who dwells with us and is with us in our suffering and in our living and dying and rising. Jesus is the eternal word of goodness that perseveres and that reminds us that we are not alone no matter what or how is happening in our world. We're called to live a life of community, of love, in all of it, in all of the mix. We are reminded to be brothers and sisters to one another, especially in a time when it's sometimes difficult and challenging. So this week, take a moment just to reflect on what is our perspective and how we live in the world today. Yes, there's some moments and some days I want 2020 to be over. Let's move on. There's also this perspective to say, what do I need to pay attention to in life now, in the struggle, and where do I recognize God in the midst of it all? Let us be reminded that God is with us in the mess. God is with us in the difficult, and God is with us in the suffering, as well as the good times, the moments of insight, the blessings of grace, the perseverance of love. God is always with us in all of it. So let us focus and persevere this week in our work, in our tending to the vineyard and caring for those who help us bring forth a harvest. Let us focus on how we can persevere in goodness, no matter the circumstance, that God is always with us. Amen.